Now, for 2 days now, the fate of these displaced people has been certainly coming on the wrong pages for many. And if authorities will return and move them away against their will, what's the position of the Arewa Consultative Forum on this move to relocate the IDPs? Joining me now on the news at 10 to discuss this further is Mr. Ahmed Suley, the Secretary General of the Arewa Youth Consultative Forum. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us, Malam Suley, at this time. What is your position as the Northern Forum, Consultative Forum? What is your position with regards to this relocation?
As usual, we have a position that is always at par with the constitution of this nation, which is the protection of Nigerian citizens and the human rights positions. So now when we talk about people being disposed, as it is now, we are having in Edo State, I think the issue always borders on the insults on the integrity of the Nigerian citizen, the average Nigerian citizen, because within the context of the constitution of this country as a sovereign state, every Nigerian has a right to reside wherever he chooses to stay. Now suddenly you find a government or an authority claiming to be a Nigerian constitutionally backed government saying he's going to now move or eject people by force and maybe return them back to where they come from.
Do you feel they are willing to want to go back to where they come from?
I don't think if they are, particularly from the northeastern side of this country, they will be quite ready to find themselves back in that region, because if it is quite safe enough for them, they would have been there since before anybody making its mind to move them.
Okay, first things first, what would you advise that, okay, now the government of Edo State, for example, wants to get them back to the northeast? What would be your advice to try to add caution to this?
Well, I think the Edo State government is really being very, very unfair, because they should have thought that these are Nigerians and they should be their brothers' keepers. Now, to that effect, I think it would have been very fair for them to go the extra length in providing the welfare that is needed, as if it were an Edo State citizen that is being traumatized as it were. But certainly to now remind us of those days where Lagos State now moved some people to Anambra State overnight for some issues that is very clandestine. But on this issue, you are telling them to go back to where they are going to end up being killed.
Now, what we're looking at now, most of the people in those states, for example, we understand are women and children. What kind of program would you suggest best for a transition period for them to go back?
Well, obviously, it's temporal, first and foremost. Temporal in the sense that right now, it is a very first aid sort of attention that is needed. You come them where it is very fair enough and conducive enough, feed them and look after their health. And if there are need for those kids to go to school, you can make an ad hoc arrangement where their educational progress is not deterred. So I don't think it's too much to ask of a government, of a state, to attend to a few number of people.
Well, some of them are orphans, you know that as well. Some of them are indeed orphans. Would you say that, for example, this is compounding the issues even further?
Oh, as far as I'm concerned, they are Nigerians. For God's sake, what is the...
But they don't have anybody to go back to in the north.
Then that makes it more incumbent on the Edo State government to stretch their hands and take these Nigerian citizens into their custody and welfare, so that the federal government may at a point come in again to even give them an extra strength. That helps in even bridging the gap between these states where these people come from, and this is what we are talking about. Our organization is always concerned about building bridges between the various tribes and various states, so that we don't, all those kind of things.
But of course, we know that it's the federal government that wants this initiative to be activated. I want to thank you so much indeed, Mr. Ahmed Sule, the Secretary General of the Arewa Youth Consultative Forum. Many thanks indeed for your time and your thoughts. Now, the federal government says that it is yet to begin negotiations with Boko Haram because it is trying to verify the authenticity of the sect's negotiators. Today, the President's Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Malam Garba Shehu, told our political correspondent, Shehu Okimbaloe, on our political program, Politics Today, that the federal government has some of the leaders of Boko Haram in its custody, and some of them appear to be wanted by the American government. However, the government is trying to match faces to the names to clarify the true leadership of the group.
What the government of Nigeria is interested in is establishing the credibility of the groups that are at hand in our detention, and some of them that are offering their hand from there. When government is persuaded that they are credible enough to be talked to, government will formally inaugurate a discussion. We're not there yet. What the president has said is that, a trusted group, they came forward and did a press conference, Center for Crisis Communications, which is a credible organization, has established contact with the Boko Haram, a faction of the Boko Haram leadership. And they have quite a number of, followers behind them in some neighboring country, which I would not mention. They have been challenged to produce their bona fide if they can establish who they are and they are credible. Claims are that in that group, there are people who have, prize money placed on them by the U.S. government. Now, if this group is influential, if they are credible, and don't forget that in the custody of the Nigerian government also, there are also leaders of the insurgent group who are being kept. So talking to those ones from outside and these ones that are here, the thing is that if the government is persuaded that there is a credible partner for negotiation, yes, President Buhari is not asked to causing this entire thing to be resolved, in a manner that is peaceful.
The internally displaced persons in Edo State argue that they have a right to remain at the International Christian Center in Edo. From all indications, they are reluctant to leave the camp. Well, joining me now to look at the rights of these IDPs is Mr. G.T. Ogunye. Mr. Ogunye is a legal practitioner and a human rights activist as well. I want to thank you indeed for joining us on the news at 10.
It's my pleasure.
Before we go into Edo State, let me ask you one very interesting question that has been making the rounds on news at the moment. What's your take on the presidency's statement that it is willing to negotiate with Boko Haram?
Well, my view is that negotiation with armed insurgents is not prohibited in a situation in which we find ourselves.
So do you support it?
Yeah, in principle. Negotiation is normal. Even the worst conflict, the worst wars in the world, usually sometimes, ended up in negotiation. And so for me, it's a matter of principle, you can't have negotiation. However, we must define right from the outside what we want to gain in negotiation. For example, in our circumstances, are you negotiating with Boko Haram with a view to making Boko Haram to surrender, disarm, and totally abandon their strategic objective of carving out a caliphate in the northeast in the first instance, and since they are insatiable, extending the frontiers to the southern part of the country. Is that why you want to negotiate with them? If negotiation will make them to achieve the objective of forcing or compelling Boko Haram to abandon their strategic objective, I think that it's worth the try. However, if negotiation is just for short-term gains of ensuring that we have exchange of prisoners the hostages that they are holding are released, specifically the Chibok girls, and their war commanders are returned to them, thereby possibly making them to become stronger, because unless they are overwhelmed and they're subdued, it's unlikely that they will abandon their strategic objective.
Interesting. Let's shift our focus back to the IDPs in Edo State and in Abuja. Of course, you know that they have resisted being moved away. What rights do they have to do that?
Well, you know, internally displaced persons have rights under the law. They are Nigerians. Regardless of the fact that by default they find themselves in Edo State. So they have the rights, all the rights that Nigerians are entitled to have, to enjoy. They also enjoy these rights, including right to liberty, right to freedom of movement, right to the dignity of human person, etc., etc. Now, under the African Union Convention on Protection and of internally displaced persons, there are also duties on behalf of state parties, including Nigeria, that was a signatory to this convention to protect the interest of internally displaced persons. That said, however, in order not to make this matter a matter of sentiment, if there was a war situation in a particular location in the country and that situation had become normal, the government has a duty to resettle and rehabilitate internally displaced persons. To that extent, it will appear that it won't make sense any longer for those internally displaced persons who are kept in camps far away from the raging war to resist moving to where they were before. Because don't forget, we are in a country where, you know, in the midst of internal displacement of many of us, and external displacement of many of us, for example, those who are perpetually, you know, fleeing from Nigeria, going to the embassies, seeking greener pastures elsewhere. We have a situation of perpetual, you know, rural, urban drift, internal migration, even without a war. And that is generating problems in our urban centers.
I'm afraid that we're going to have to leave it at that, Mr. G.T. Ogunye, a legal practitioner and a human rights advocate. I want to thank you so much indeed for your time and your thoughts.
Yeah.